Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, the Chair of this committee, for this particular report. That Article 206 established the consolidated fund in this country, where all monies that are supposed to be in government go to, was correct. And then it also went further to create the consolidated fund services. This is the monies that will actually come from the pool where the monies for government have gone to, apart from those that may be determined not to go there by this particular parliament. Now, in that consolidated fund and consolidated fund services, the highest expenditure from that particular fund is actually foreign debt. And that is why foreign debt then becomes a very important topic, as this report has indicated. And further, that this expenditure on foreign debt has increased, has sprung up between 2017 and 2018 to the present day by more than 105%. Those are the facts in this particular report. That now we are spending so much on payment of debt, and it has increased within 5 years by about 105%. So that's why foreign debt then becomes a very important topic, because it means of all the funds from the consolidated fund, almost over 100% of it is being spent on foreign debt. Yet we are continuing to borrow. This is what this report brings to bear. Therefore, it becomes very important that we control foreign debt so that we control the expenditure from CFS to pay the foreign debt. Also, something that comes out very clearly here is the fact that from the first charge of the CFS are not only the foreign debt. In fact, there has been a misguidance in this country, Honorable Speaker. I come from the labor movement, and sometimes you are told that the government is spending too much money on recurrent expenditure. So then we, the workers of this country, get worried that maybe a lot of salaries are being paid. I want to put it to you, Honorable Speaker, that in fact the payment on salaries has been reducing since 2017. In fact, it has reduced by about 13%. So when you talk about recurrent expenditure, it's not the salaries as a normal Kenyan will take it. Payment on salaries are reducing. But what is really increasing and making recurrent expenditure increase is the payment of foreign debt. Unfortunately, the payment of salaries for workers in this country has been lumped together with the payment of foreign debt. So when it increases, people imagine that the salaries are the ones that are increasing. And this is why this report is here, and this country must know, so that we bring this to an end. That this country doesn't even know how much it has borrowed. Very interesting. There are agencies in this country which are supposed to be told how much we have borrowed. And one of such a unit is the Comptroller and Auditor General, who submitted that he doesn't know how much we have borrowed because he doesn't have the correct or all the disclosure on how much we have borrowed. There are levels when he reaches, that office reaches, no disclosure is given. And that is the area where we borrow through what is called guarantees. There are organizations in these countries like KQ and others which can just go and borrow and then the government guarantee. But the government itself and government officials, and that's why this report should indict some government officers who are not giving complete disclosure of the guarantees of government. And I think I picked the points from the Honorable Suba. He seemed to have been exact on this, that some of the debts we are talking about could be personal debts, because if they are not personal, why are the authorities not disclosing every debt? And that is why 3 levels of foreign debt are given by different agencies in this particular country. So we even don't know how much we have borrowed. And that's what the report is talking about. That soon you'll be told, and it's coming to this parliament, that now we must change the way we are borrowing. Yes, we have borrowed up, we have given a ceiling of 10 trillion. You remember how we argued over that. But this report says that when you put everything together and even include the pending bills which have been talked about, we have surpassed 10 trillion. Yet they will bring a document here.
Add Honorable Mboko Milemba 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Which will require, Kenya should listen to this, that now we borrow as per the percentile of GDP. And I've had a honorable member speak on it there. But I would wish to say this about borrowing as a percentile of GDP. Yes, it's good. Countries who have done that, equally have lent their money outside and that money is earning profit. Kenya has not done any one of that. So when you boast of Japan having borrowed a very high percentage of its GDP, sometimes it borrows to also lend to African countries which are paying at a high profit. Hey, are you listening to me? So we cannot just go their way because we have to go their way. We have to look at our situation individually because we have not lent any money anywhere. Even to small countries around us, like Sudan, we have not lent any money and we are not getting any profits. And that is why this foreign debt really must be checked. Too much to say about this, but what I want to say is that let's support the report and let's give this committee the teeth to bite so that before finally we do the final budget, we also have discussed the status of foreign debt and how much we can borrow. Soon they will tell us that we surrender the borrowing to them. Please don't accept that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You know, the best brain on matters finance from Maombi County is Honorable Andrew Kwame Adepo. Give him a chance to contribute and also to tell us how much foreign debt has been used to fund what project in Maombi County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know whether I'm able to tell you that because do you have any anyway? So if I doubt what I'm asking, it is impossible for me to say a word on how much of the foreign debt has gone to development in my area. That is Maombi County. Mr. Speaker, we have a serious problem. Our debt is rising. And a situation where the cost of living is extremely high, the cost of business is very high. Many businesses are migrating from Kenya, going to other countries. Some are closing down. Just behind us here, Intercontinental Hotel is no more. At one time they said another hotel was soon closing. All these are happening in Kenya, and that means that our revenue collection must go down because the bodies which produce revenue for us are going away. Now, we need to find out why we need to borrow even to feed ourselves, because the recurrent expenditure is not what we should borrow for. We are actually borrowing more for expenditure now than what we borrow for development. Development projects would help us. They would help the economy. So that is one area where we need to begin. Let me say that public debt, which is comprised of local or domestic borrowing and foreign borrowing. Let me say foreign borrowing, though it is better because it is cheaper, but you know, since we borrow in foreign currency, the rate at which we'll be paying is increasing depending on the behavior of our Kenya shillings in the market. So I don't know which one you would say is better. Local one also has disadvantages of denying our local people money to do business because the government is competing them. And the government borrowing is attractive to banks more than the individual borrowing. So if we keep ourselves in borrowing in local currency or local market, certainly the local businesses will suffer. So there we have to do something. But one thing which have been said before by my colleagues is that we really need to know what this total debt accumulated is composed of. We need a breakdown per country or per company so that we can analyze and know the correctness, the genuineness of this foreign currency. Mr. Speaker, we also need to do the same with local borrowing, because that's when we can know whether we are paying for what we should pay. Otherwise, we are having a big burden of paying this, and this burden will go on to our children and our children's children. Yet, they are not what we should pay. I wanted to say something on the pension. It is sad when we hear that somebody has lived for almost 150 years and we are paying pension for him. Such a person definitely is not existing. And while I mention that, I see that Kenyans themselves suffer a lot because when they retire, it takes several months before they even begin getting their pension. And what I say is that we should actually ask the government to collect all the data on the person going to retire early enough so that by the time he's retiring, he should retire going home with his pension. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think my time is over, but I wish I'd...
Do you need more time? Give him 1 more minute. Honorable Shabir, prepare. You are speaking.
Thank you.
Next,
Yeah,
you are speaking.
Shabir has agreed.
Hold on.
So,
Order, Honorable Kwame Adepo. Honorable Shakil, according to the list we have here, we have only 3 requests, and you are on top of it after Honorable Kwame Adepo. So prepare. We have enough time.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my appeal is that we should look at our tax regime again, so that we can tax people in a manner that's conducive to the economy. You remember, Mr. Speaker, the government has now adopted no subsidy for consumption, which means petrol, for example, which is really a consumption product, cannot be subsidized. But if you were to subsidize it, we need to subsidize Arabs who are the producers. So we must have exceptions. We must look at the situations. Each one we must examine and not just have a blanket covering that no subsidy for consumption. With that, Mr. Speaker, thanks for giving me time.
Thank you, Honorable Andrew Kwame Adepo. The Honorable Shakil Shabir, the gentleman representing the people of Kisumu East.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, firstly, I stand to support...
Honorable Shabir, what time are you worried about?
I was calculating that if they need 30 minutes for the mover to reply, I might be running short of time.
Honorable
But
Shabir,
you've assured me that isn't the case.
Never worry about time when you want to speak and I'm on the seat.
Thank you,
Proceed.
thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir. Speaker, sir, I stand to support the report on the Select Committee on Public Debt and Privatization. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have been in the Finance Committee now for 15 years. This time I'm not there. But every time we have asked the same question: public debt, public debt, public debt. Mr. Speaker, at this moment in time, our declared public debt is 8.9 trillion shillings. Declared. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are told that there's a public debt office. And it's public information. I personally went to the public debt office at the Treasury. It's on the first floor, hidden in a corner, in a place where they put all the rejects they don't want. It took me, from the Finance Committee, 1.5 hours to get a basic report for 2018, which was full of holes. Now, I ask, if they say this is a public report, and they used to come and keep telling us in the Finance Committee that it's a public report, anybody can get it, it is false. The position here is this: under the Public Finance Management Act, there is a public debt office. And every year, the Minister of Finance has to give the authority to the public debt office to operate. they do not give that authority. In Britain, there is the Public Debt Office. The Public Debt Office is autonomous. Here it is thrown away in the corner, never to be recognized, never to be looked at, and they're just wasting their time. The reason I say this is, Mr. Chair, I was sitting here in 2021. I was sitting there when the Minister of Finance came here. And he made a promise to us. If you raise the debt ceiling to 6 trillion, we shall pay back the very expensive commercial loans. I think, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, you might have remembered that. He made that promise. So we said, okay, and he started making all the deals, how much expensive it is, why we have short-term loans for long-term, we taken short-term debt for long-term loans, and why it's so costly. So we increased the limit under a lot of pressure. He lied, straightforward lying. I say this with the fact is, Mr. Speaker, sir, we nearly even wanted to impeach this gentleman. He came to this house and he misled us totally. However, the point that I'm making is this. Treasury takes the debt office as a joke. Treasury is not, we don't have a debt management strategy. The one that they have, they've thrown in the bin. There is no policies, there is nothing. Mr. Speaker, sir, I urge you to give me 1 extra minute. The debt office, the urging...
Shaber, because of your stance on matters integrity and corruption, and being that you are discussing debt,
yes,
you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Public Debt Office is meant to be an autonomous office. The Treasury and Planning decide what they want, how much money they need to borrow, and the Debt Office goes out to look for the best and most suitable place that they can borrow money at the right rate. They are meant to be professionals in raising money in the money market. What are they doing? They are doing nothing. What happens is the minister goes and he goes to IMF, sits there and meets these so-called vulture financiers. They are called vultures. And agrees on short-term debt for long-term projects, and then comes back and tells us we have to pay. So the point we are trying to raise is, I hope that committee now insists that the Public Debt Office become autonomous. It was the same problem, Mr. Chair, when the CBK was under the Treasury. Treasury would bully CBK. Now that CBK is independent and autonomous, it's the point. So we need the Public Debt Office to be autonomous. And so that we can actually plan, and I urge this committee that the first thing they must do is a forensic audit. Mr. Speaker, sir, I can tell you with great confidence that the 9 trillion is not the amount. What they have not included, as my colleague said from Mahaya, there are no sovereign debts, sovereign guarantees involved, no guarantees, no contingent liabilities. None of these things have added on. Where the other countries, these are, as you understand, a contingent debt is a contingent debt. And it should be added on to give the right balance. We do not really know what our external public debt is. And then there's one other thing, Mr. Speaker, sir. Government should be stopped or maybe reduce the amount that they can borrow from the domestic market. As our friend just spoke, it is very important because the rate of interest rises. When the Goldenberg issue was in full-fledged, the rate of Treasury bill was 75%. 75%. So what we think the government should stop borrowing from domestic market, and I hope that this committee will be able to take up on the Debt Management Act that was put in the last term and strengthen the Debt Management Office to be autonomous and to act with teeth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me extra time.
Thank you, Honorable Shakil Shabir. The Member of Parliament for Gichuku, the Honorable Gichimu Gidinji, Senior Counsel. And thank you for your patience. You've been waiting for too long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope that the title of the senior counsel will be coming soon. Those are good prayers.
And let me start by thanking this committee led by Honorable Abdi Shurie for this timely tabling of this report for...
Order, Honorable Gichimu. Did the MP for Roysambu want to contribute to this? That MP going out,
is MP for Kieni.
Yeah. The MP for Kieni, did he want to contribute to this? He's speaking from within Parliament. We let him go. Continue, Honorable Gichimu. He has been quite patient, I think, from the entire afternoon. I don't know whether he wanted to.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I started by thanking Honorable Abdi Shurie and his committee for a timely report to this Parliament. It comes in when we are just about to start a new budget cycle of 2023-2024. And this is very, very important so that as we go by the issues of budget, we know what we owe our creditors. And Mr. Speaker, it is incumbent upon any government to disclose all the liabilities and obligations and debts, public debts, which are both external and internal, that is domestic and external debts, should be disclosed so that we can be able to cut our coat according to our size. Debts are good and they are bad at the same time if they are not well planned. And it is not an obligation to spend, Mr. Speaker, but it is an obligation to pay a debt, except for the basic needs that we know about. All the other expenditures are not mandatory, but a debt is an obligation, it is mandatory. And that is why, even before we go to making this year's budget, that is 2023-2024, it is important for this Parliament to know the level of the debt, the commitments that are being made, the structure of the payments of these debts, and also I would urge the committee at some point also to look at the issue of the PPPs, public-private partnerships, and the concessions that we have. Those are implied debts to Kenyans, because when we use like the expressway where we are supposed to pay for over or close to 30 years, then it means that we owe the person who